Hey everyone, I'm back to talk more The Batman. Of course I'm talking The Batman. I love this movie, and I could talk about it from now until the sequel comes out. There were a lot of things I couldn't touch on because of the non-spoiler aspect of my last review, but this is a full spoiler review, and I'm breaking down everything that I loved about this movie, so let's get to it. One of the reasons why I love this movie is its depth and its attention to the themes that it presents throughout the film itself. And this is present from the very first frame of film. We follow the mayor as he interacts with his son who's about to go trick-or-treating, and he acts like this doting, loving father, but as soon as the son walks out the door, we see his demeanor change, and he becomes a lot more serious and stoic person. And that's because this film is about duality. It's about the masks we put on, and it's about the masks we wear, and it's about how people are not really who they seem. They're layered. They have multiple dimensions to them. And this theme of duality is very present in our two leads. Our lead hero, Bruce Wayne Batman, and our lead villain, who is Edward Nashton, aka the Riddler. They are both really two sides of the same coin. Both orphans, both grew up very differently. Bruce Wayne grew up with the Wayne fortune. Edward Nashton grew up in a foster home that was essentially Wayne Manor, that the Waynes donated their property to become a foster home. So they kind of very much mirror each other's journeys. And that duality is very important to this film because we see a lot of characters, we meet them one way and then we see their personalities completely different by the end of the film. Like, I'm thinking of Officer Martinez. The first time we meet him, he's very hostile towards the Batman. He's very protective of the police and the crime scene. But towards the end of the film, he not only is he working with Batman, but he helps him solve the Riddler's plan, and he helps save the day. I really love the beginning of this film. The beginning of this film is probably one of the greatest introductions to a character in any superhero movie of all time. They do something similar to this in The Dark Knight, where the bat signal is used as sort of this symbol. It's used as a weapon of sorts by Batman and by Gordon, where the light itself creates fear in the hearts of criminals across Gotham City. And this movie kind of carries that torch and kind of does the same thing here, but it's so much more effectively done in the Batman because you really do feel the fear. And there's these wonderful shots of these criminals that are committing crimes, and they stare into the darkness as they see the bat signal, and they're afraid to go there because Batman could be anywhere. And it's that kind of superstitiousness, that kind of sense of Batman being an urban legend of sorts, that is so true to the character, and I loved it so much. And we see how Bruce is coping after spending 2 years serving the streets of Gotham. We see him journaling to try and keep everything straight and just to try and keep his mind right, which is something they take from the comic books. That's another thing that this movie does extremely well. It borrows a lot from the comics. Not really one comic specifically. Like, they take a lot from Batman Earth 1, but what this movie really excels at is cherry-picking pieces of information from throughout Batman's history and using it to serve the story that it's trying to tell. And I really love that as a fan of the comics and as a fan of this character, just picking up on all these little Easter eggs sprinkled throughout this movie. Robert Pattinson as Batman is, for me, it doesn't get any better than that. He is my Batman. When I think of Batman as a character, especially in his second year of crime fighting, this is very much the kind of Batman that I think of. A lot of people are complaining because there's not that Bruce Wayne persona, there's not that kind of rich playboy persona of Bruce Wayne walking around, and I understand that people kind of miss that after having that present in almost every single movie that we've gone with Batman in it. But for me, it really didn't matter because that wasn't really important to the story they were trying to tell. And if you were paying attention to the movie, you're seeing that they're kind of paving the way for that as the franchise unfolds, because we're really getting the establishment of Bruce kind of understanding how he has to fight this war now. Because that's another great thing about this movie. The beginning kind of makes you feel like Batman's war is never ending, and he's fighting a losing fight because he's been doing this for 2 years straight, and crime is just still rampant throughout Gotham City. Gotham City has never looked better than it has in this movie. There is so much life in Gotham. Like, it feels like an absolute shithole. It feels like the worst place to live in the world. And that is really essentially what Gotham is. There's so much character to it. And they name drop so many sections of the town from the comics. There was a lot of love and effort put into this film, and it shows all the way throughout, from direction to writing to production design. Everyone involved really seemed like they were putting their best foot forward in trying to make a really, really great Batman movie. Pattinson's Batman is also smart. He's not just an aggressive fighter. He's more than that. He's a detective. He understands forensic science, and he's very deductive, and he's able to pick up on things that people don't pick up on. He sees clues that the forensic team has yet to see. He has a great memory. He's able to remember things. He's able to figure out the murder weapon based off the indentation from the original crime scene with the mayor. This is a Batman who has trained not only his body but his mind. He is a master of himself. And this take is very, very well done. The intensity that Robert Pattinson portrays in his eyes alone when he's acting with the cowl on is phenomenal. Like, he makes these expressions that are extremely fantastic. He can be intimidating. He's able to emote so well with the armor and the cape and the cowl. This Batman has never been more expressive than he is in this movie. And I owe that all to Robert Pattinson and the fantastic job he did with the character. This movie, to me, since probably Nolan's Batman Begins, was the first time in a very long time I felt like I was watching a Batman movie. This movie was about the Batman. It's not a Batman movie where Batman is sidelined in favor of villains who steal the spotlight from him. This really is Batman's movie. He is at the forefront for the majority of the film in trying to figure out how to take down the Riddler. The only thing I would have wanted more from this film, I would have loved more interaction between Bruce and Alfred. Andy Serkis' Alfred in this movie was fantastic. It's a very different version of Alfred than we're used to seeing. And yes, we're familiar with their dynamic from other movies, but we're not familiar with the dynamic between this version of Bruce Wayne and an Alfred quite like this. He's not the family's butler. He was hired by Thomas Wayne to protect him because he was a trusted ally when they were in the war together. And he kind of helped Bruce train a little bit in the beginning of his career before he went off to travel the world. And so this Alfred is a very interesting take on the character that I would really love to have spent a little bit more time with throughout the movie. Its influence takes a lot from Batman Earth 1, that version of Alfred. And the way that he was featured so sporadically throughout the movie and how they really weren't putting that much focus on him played so well into that scene with the bombing at Wayne Tower, because I was on the edge of my seat. I really actually thought they could have possibly killed Alfred in this version of a Batman story that they were telling, and it had me so scared. I was so nervous. And that's another thing that I really want to touch on is the story. It is structured for a 2-hour and 55-minute Batman movie that is a noir detective story. This thing flows extremely well and is able to encapsulate all these different characters from Batman's rogues gallery and throughout Gotham, and it really makes the city feel lived in and gives it a rich history with so much space that I still want to explore in Matt Reeves' Gotham. I mean, you have Batman chasing leads that lead him to the Penguin, who's running the Iceberg Lounge, and that takes him to Catwoman, who's working for the Penguin. And all of that brings us back to Carmine Falcone, who's played fantastically by John Turturro. Like, I don't think a lot of people were even realized he was in the movie and weren't really expecting a lot from him. And all of these things just weave together so well into the main plotline of the film. And I know it was long for a lot of people, but honestly, I could have sat in that theater 3 more hours and lived in this world for 3 more hours, and I would have been happy. I mean, let's talk villains. Colin Farrell, he killed it. He's awesome. He's amazing. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, looking at that, prosthetic work and how fantastic it was, that Colin Farrell, for the short amount of screen time that he has in this movie, would steal the show when he came on screen as the Penguin. This is a lot more of a rough version of the Penguin than we're used to seeing. He's not the dapper gentleman from 66, and he's not kind of the aggressive animal from Batman Returns. He's kind of a mix of the two. He's a sleazy gangster type, and that really gives me Arkham Asylum, Arkham City vibes. That version of the Penguin is very similar to this one. It's kind of an amalgamation between the Arkham universe Penguin and Batman Earth One's Mayor Cobblepot. Zoe Kravitz comes in here as the 5th person to play Catwoman in a live-action film. Now, and not only does she just knock the role out of the park, she brings in possibly the definitive Catwoman performance. I think this version of Selina Kyle, the Selina Kyle that she portrays in the film, is the definitive version of that character. Paul Dano as the Riddler. He's a weirdo, but if the Riddler existed in this world, he'd be a little eccentric, and the Riddler in the comics is a bit eccentric at times. This version of the character, again, is another amalgamation. There's bits and pieces of him that take inspiration from every Riddler origin in the comics. There is a lot of the original Riddler in here. There's a lot of Batman Earth 1 serial killer Riddler in here, who's killing people using riddles, but there is really a bigger goal behind his, game that he's playing with Batman. I'm actually surprised at how long the Riddler is in the mask for throughout this movie. You really only see his face like twice. I think there's 2 scenes where you actually get to see Paul Dano without the mask on. And his plan borrows a lot from different Batman stories. There's a bit of the Long Halloween murder mystery aspect of it. There's a bit of Batman Earth 1's Riddler storyline. There's a lot of Zero Year, especially the ending of the film and what Riddler ends up doing to Gotham, which is flooding it. That is taken directly from Zero Year. There's just so much in here that I really enjoy. I enjoy the twist that Selina Kyle is, in fact, Carmine Falcone's daughter, which is something that they take from, the Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Catwoman When in Rome graphic novels. That's something I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the nods to future Batman projects that they may be developing. I like the shout out of Hush. I like the potential to bring in Harvey Dent as a new district attorney. I just really like the world that Matt Reeves put together in this movie. I think it's fantastic. It feels like they can go in so many different directions with a sequel that as a fan of this film, I am so excited for all the HBO Max series. I'm excited for, the next movie. I'm excited to see where they go from here. And I think sequel teases is another thing that people seem to be complaining about from this movie. They don't like the infamous Joker scene. The scene with Barry Keoghan as the Joker. And I really didn't mind it because I think the character appeared in the film at the right time. He shows up as Bruce is kind of figuring out that he needs to be a new version of Batman. A Batman that represents hope in Gotham instead of fear. And the Joker comes in to represent a shift of the guard on the opposite end, of the villain spectrum. He is the yin to Batman's yang. So whereas Batman is looking to become a true blue hero, a symbol of hope, the Joker's taking the criminal element and manipulating it to become more chaotic and to become more gimmicky. And I would really enjoy this version of the Joker, being kind of the Moriarty to this Bruce Wayne Batman Sherlock Holmes, and he just lurks in the shadows, kind of manipulating people for a couple of movies, and then him and Batman have this climactic battle for the soul of Gotham City. But expanding on that more, that scene at the end where Bruce saves those people, where he, without hesitation, sees the electrical line falling into that water, he, without hesitation, jumps and cuts the line, saving all the people underneath him. Not only that, but he goes to extend his hand, and all the adults are afraid, but the mayor's child reaches his hand back out because he knows Batman's a symbol of good. And to see everyone kind of reach for Batman, and to see Batman light that flare and lead everyone out of there, and then continue to help people into the break of day, into the daylight, it was so emotional for me. It was such a powerful moment. As a lifelong fan of this character, I feel like he's been misrepresented a lot in the mainstream. People see him as this dark, brooding, symbol of fear and terror, but you should only really be afraid of Batman if you're a bad person, if you're doing bad things. Batman's a symbol of good. He will fight for the good people. He does what he does so that people can live normal lives. So if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't be afraid of Batman. And that's kind of the direction they're taking this character in. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see what they come up with next. But that's just why I love this movie, because it takes us there. It takes us from point A and it brings us to point B, and I love the journey. I love the journey that we go on with this character. It's subtle. It's not in your face. It's not hitting you over the head with what they're trying to do. But if you pick up on it and if you understand it, it's so rewarding and so gratifying. But that's all I have for right now. I will be back either later this week or early next week with my breakdown video of all the Easter eggs and comic book references in The Batman. If you like this video and you want more videos like it, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, and hit the like button. And give me your thoughts on The Batman. Tell me, did you like the film? Did you not like the film? What do you want to see in a sequel? Do you want a sequel? And then we'll discuss it in a later video. But until next time, guys, catch you later.